Hi everybody, it is time to do another Round the World update. Over the past week or so, I've had a couple things going on. One is personally, I have sort of ups and downs, and I've been sort of down this week, and I haven't been real motivated to get in here and do a lot on any of my tanks. The other thing I've had going on, as a lot of you know, is my new native tank is coming together, and any effort I have been putting into doing any work in here is usually revolved around getting my new native tank set up. So there's not a lot to talk about in this week's Round the World update, but I did want to shoot it just to keep everybody up to par on what's going on here. So this tank is the one that had the angelfish that I took out, I put back, I moved around, I added some new angelfish. So fortunately, over time, everybody sort of settled in, and you can see they're all just sort of swimming around together, hanging out. You got that one in the back. The big dominant one is the one right here, sort of dead center of the screen. And you can see he's not acting really aggressively towards any of the other ones in the tank or anything else. So this tank settled in nicely, and once again, it is back to just sitting here ticking over like a clock, except now instead of having one angelfish, I have 3 angelfish in my 29-gallon miscellaneous tank. Other than that, not a lot going on. I did shoot a little bit of video of some of my frogs that are in this tank. That's about it really with this tank. I haven't done any work to it. I did steal a little bit of the nitrifying bacteria out of my sponge filters, and I used that to augment my new native tank. So once again, revolving around my native tank, I actually did a little bit of something to this tank, but it wasn't a whole lot of anything. My Gourami tank here, likewise, I have not done anything with this tank at all this week. I haven't done a water change. I haven't done anything. So on my list of things I really need to get caught up on this weekend is doing a water change in here. I've got to wipe the glass down. Honestly, on this tank, I even have to wipe the outside of the glass down. It's got drips and drizzles on it, and it's just, again, I haven't really been doing much of anything in here. You can see the plants on the left are just dense and thick again. I need to get in there and really thin out that water sprite to allow some of the light to get to the bottom of the tank. The temple plant to the right is getting so thick and bushy that it's really blocking a lot of the light from getting to my red tiger lotus down there, and so that's actually beginning to struggle a little bit because it's not getting enough light. So I'm going to have to get in there and trim some of the top of that some of that temple plant out to allow that tiger lotus to get some more light. But once again, nothing other than that going on in the tank this week. That's just intentions, not anything that I've actually done. Same goes for the angel tank, my angelfish tank here. Nothing actually done to it this week. I haven't even gotten in there and done a water change. I always hate those little curls that stick up and shine the light out like that. Again, nothing going on. I've got intentions. I really need to get in there and thin the plants out in this tank as well. This water sprite is just, it's like cutting the lawn. I got to get in there all the time and thin the stuff out. It just grows like a monster in there. I'm still planning on getting that white soil out of there. I told you a long time ago that I would do that over time. From time to time I'll get in there and I'll do a water change and I'll vac some more out. Nothing I'm in any hurry. It's not causing me any problems. I just don't like the way it looks. So it's nothing I'm really, overly excited to get in there and do. I've got the winter coming up. I'll have plenty of time to be hanging out here in the basement and doing stuff here in the fish room. So I'm not going to force myself to do it when I don't feel like I'm ready to. The black ghost knife fish tank here, I'm really not happy with the way it is now at a 90-degree angle to the corner, because where I sit, I'm now looking at the tank pretty much like that, and you can see I've got as much glare from the new tank as I do a look into this tank. Even when I stand right here, look at all the glare you get. I mean, you're this whole side of the tank, you're looking at my native tank rather than into this tank. So I'm not terribly happy with that, but I'm not entirely sure what to do about it or how to go about it. I guess I'm just going to have to deal with, whenever I want to shoot video of this tank, I'm going to have to cover up the native tank next to it. And if I want to sit and enjoy it, I'm going to have to just move my chair and sit in a different position to be able to really look into this tank. So here's another one that I've done nothing to this week. Not a lot needed to be done in this, just a simple water change. My canister filters from this tank, my Angelfish tank, and my Gourami tank are all due to be changed as well as the one that's in my 125, which we haven't gotten to yet. So that tank, or those filters, when we do them, I'm going to steal some of the biological material out of those filters as well, and I'm going to use it to augment my new 125-gallon native tank. So if this is your first look at the new version of it, if you saw it last week, I had that big log in it. I actually do have that log sitting right there in a bucket. It just didn't work for me. It just didn't flow right. It didn't feel right. As I explained in those early videos, that was only in there just to give my brain something to work with and something to look at. And what it wound up working out was that log just didn't fit. It didn't look right. It didn't go with the feel I wanted. It didn't go with the flow I was looking for. Or anything else. So I wound up going with what we've got here, and I'm in the process now of thinking about stocking it, and I'll shoot some video on that specifically later. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail since there's not really anything to talk about other than, once again, intentions rather than things I've done. So what I've done with this tank this week is I did get the filter set up and established and on it. If you will notice, you can see some circulation there on the surface. I got the spray bar in. Again, we will talk about all this in much more depth as time goes on. This tank's going to sort of be its own project in its own right. One thing I will note that I'm really excited about is you see all that sort of white fuzzy looking stuff that's developing on there. You got a little bit developing on here on the bottom edge. It's most visible on this piece of wood here. I've got that white fur growing. If you're scratching your head about that, if you've ever put wood in any of your tanks and you've seen that stuff develop, that is normal, and it is a natural part of putting new wood in a tank. It is some kind of fungus. I don't know the actual species of fungus, but it's perfectly common, normal, and nothing to be alarmed about. It won't hurt your fish, it won't hurt your tank, it won't do anything. In time, it will go away on its own. But if you have any kind of off-flux grazers, or the kinds of fish that are typically considered algae eaters, like a rubber-lip pleco or a Chinese algae eater, any kind of off-flux grazer, or like a scraping sucker fish that will eat that sort of thing, like a hillstream loach is a good example as well. They all eat that fungus. So if you have any of those kind of fish, they will take care of that and get rid of it. If you don't have any of those kind of fish and you have new wood in your tank and you're a little alarmed about this white, fuzzy, slimy looking stuff that's growing on it, don't be alarmed at all. That is a very normal part of new wood aging into a tank, and in time it will go away. See, there's a little bit better look at it. So in another week or so, this wood in here will probably look downright white and fuzzy. It'll be covered in that stuff. And again, nothing I'm concerned about. That's actually a good sign. It lets me know that when I stripped and scraped and prepared the wood, I got it down to being fairly clean, and we're starting fresh, and that's why we're going to start with all of this new fuzzy white growth on it. So lots and lots of good stuff coming up with this tank. Again, we're going to have a little discussion here soon about how I treated the wood and the rocks and prepared everything, and we're going to talk about water circulation and the filter and so on and so forth. So make sure you're subscribed if you're not already. That way you won't miss anything you got coming up on this tank, because this is going to be a fun project. So moving right along, again, we'll get back to this tank as time moves on, but right now we're going to do the round the world snail tank. Again, no biggie, just some snails in there. I feed them to my puffer, so that just has snails growing in it. My Gudgeon and T-bar tank, as you can probably notice, the glass is absolutely filthy in here. Most of that is the brown diatom algae. It still wipes off, very easily and simply. Not happy with the way I've got the water circulation in here. I've been tinkering with that and moving that around. A lot of you know that I've moved that rock in the back. I've moved the plants around a few times. I'm still getting this dead zone where I'm still getting all this fish waste piled up, and it's a little difficult to tell at that angle, but you can see I've got mountains of gravel being piled up. That little leaf sticking out like a gravestone is actually the very tippy top of a small temple plant that I was trying to get rooted in and growing right there. And this T-bar here has pretty much buried it, and all we have left is the very top of that leaf sticking out. So I'm going to have to get in there again and once again spread the sand around, which doesn't really accomplish much other than giving my T-bar something to do of moving it all back into a big pile for me. But I'm going to move that rock, and I'm probably going to wind up moving that plant in the back. I just think that's disrupting water flow too much, and without the rocks piled up on it, the T-bar is going to dig it up anyway. So probably not going to have any plants across the back of the tank. And as I said before, this is going to be just a work in progress. I'm just going to keep after tinkering with it and making little changes and watching and seeing how the change affects it and making a tiny little adjustment. And it might take a while, but we'll get it there. We'll dial it in and we'll get it to where the tank just flows nice and smooth and I don't have a bunch of crap on the bottom of the tank. And, you know, it'll just look like a nice tank. It'll be back to one of my lower maintenance type tanks and everything will be cool. So, let me walk around this side of the room here to get to this, because this is my 125 gallon tank, and like my new native tank is 6 feet long, so you got to be a little bit away from it to get the whole thing in one frame here. Nothing going on in this tank. The only little update I can give is about my elephantnose fish. Not long ago I put some of the chocolate zebra plecos that I had in another tank. I put them in this tank. They're very small and sister species. They're only a couple of inches long and they're very reclusive. Yet since the day they went in, I have not seen my elephantnose fish in this tank. So I don't know what happened. I don't know where he went. I don't know if it's dead. At this point, I'm kind of presuming it is. It's been so long since I've seen it, and I mean, I haven't seen a glimpse of it in probably about 2 weeks now, and it was never a very reclusive fish. It was always out and about. At the most, I would come down and think, I wonder where my elephant nose is, because I don't see it in the tank. And within an hour, I'd see it again. You know, it wasn't always out and about the way these Congo tetras are, but it was not so reclusive that it was one of those fish that I just assumed was still in there, and from time to time I'll wind up seeing it. This was a fish that I saw regularly all day, every day, and now I do not see it at all and have not seen so much as a glimpse of it since those other fish went in the tank. Again, I can't imagine how those other fish would have any impact on it, but you know, it's awfully coincidental that when I added those other fish, I suddenly stopped seeing my elephant nose. So that's the only real update I got going on in this tank. I do, as usual, need to get in here and do a water change. My water sprite that I have floating on the surface is almost the length of the tank. I'm really trying to get it to go from one end of the tank all the way to the other. But the problem is every time I get in here to thin it out and remove some of the roots and remove some of the babies and the new growth, what happens is, for example, we'll find, let's see, right here, you see these two nodes where the roots are growing. These will be new plants, but when I go to break them out, this branch will actually break right where these root nodes are. So this long branch that goes all the way down to the end of the tank is going to get broken off right here, and it'll have to start growing again. So every time I get in there and I do a little bit of removal and a little bit of work to trim, you know, to thin this up and make it look a little nicer, there we go, I wind up losing some of it and I have to sort of start over again. It's kind of like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But if you are doing 2 steps forward, 1 step back, eventually you'll get where you're going. It just takes a little longer. So we're going to get there eventually. I don't know why this is my goal at this point. It just seems interesting to see if I can get that thing to spread all the way across the entire surface of this 6-foot tank. That's the biggest single water sprite plant I've ever seen in a fish tank. I also have a lot of new algae growing all over the front of this tank. I knew that was going to happen, and the reason is I added this LED. It wasn't even pushed all the way forward. Let's get it forward and then we'll get to see a look at what it really looks like. It's this new LED bar that I had in my Brackish tank originally, but when I moved my Brackish tank to here, or I should say there, I use the light bar to light up the front of this tank, and you can see what a great job it does. It really brightens up the front of this tank, and because of the colored lights with the LED, it really makes the fish stand out and pop. You can even see colors on these fish that are considered more drab, like my Synodontis and even my snakeskin Gourami looks good under this light. When the Congo tetras swim underneath the light in the front of this tank, they look fantastic. They look so good when they swim under that LED. So the tank looks a lot better, but I've stepped up my maintenance schedule now because I'm getting all this algae that's growing on the front glass due to all this increased light And you can see right there, you see all that algae growing on the glass. So I need to get in here, I need to trim this plant, I need to do a water change, I need to do the filter maintenance, and I need to wipe the glass down. And I really need to get in here and vac as well in this particular case. This end of the tank right here, underneath this piece of wood and these pieces of rock, is an absolute detritus trap. It is just filled with mulm and all kinds of nastiness, and it's been a while since I've been in there and vac that out. So I will try to get that on video when I do it, and you will be amazed at how much gunk comes out. Or maybe you won't, I don't know, but a ton of stuff is going to come up underneath of all that stuff in the corner there. Again, intentions, not anything I've actually done just yet. And we get to my brackish tank, and Butterbean is, where is he? He's back in that corner. You can see he's even dug himself out a little pit in the corner. That's kind of where he likes to hide and hang out. I'm thinking about building him a little cave back there, but I don't know if he would like having the cave. He does sit in this cave quite frequently, and occasionally I will even see him hunkering down in the smaller one off here to the left. He really seems to like drifting in and out of the plants too, so I'm thinking of adding more Java. But the problem is now that I've got it up to salinity, if I add the Java in there, it's going to be shocked, and I could have to, I'll have to start a separate tank to start acclimating that and bringing it up to the salinity. I've also got the option of using some other plants that don't take so much acclimation time, and I'm even considering putting some of that floating water sprite in this tank because I just really like that floating water sprite. I have it in a lot of my tanks. I really like the effects it gives. I like the way it subdues the light in the tank. I like the hanging roots, and I know the fish always appreciate it as well. So not a lot going on here, but this is my brackish tank. It's been set up long enough now that I'm sure everybody's seen it, and everybody knows that Butterbean's in there. You can already see the little graveyard of empty snail shells beginning to form on the bottom. And other than that, obviously not a whole lot of activity going on in here. Last, and in this case I will say least, is my crayfish tank. The crayfish are still more or less in hibernation. I've kind of lost interest in worrying about the plants. Every now and again when I notice they're getting kind of dry, I'll go in there and water these two little pots I have on the top. We're halfway through December. This tank is about to get shut down pretty soon. The crayfish that are in here are going to wind up going in my new native tank. Let's see if we can see somebody. There he is. There's one hiding usually in this corner. And he never comes out anymore. He never eats anymore. I stopped even feeding this tank weeks ago. So I think they're in sort of winter hibernation kind of mode at this point, even though the temperatures in here are not winter temperatures. I think just the time of year has them going dormant and their metabolism slowing down. So not much going on with the crayfish tank. The two that are in here, or I'm assuming there's two. I know that one is still in there because we just saw it, and there was two in here. I've never smelled any stink, or like it's never smelled like a dead crayfish in here, so I'm assuming I still have two live ones in here, and they will eventually end up in my native tank that we were just looking at. And at this rate, it's looking like they're going to be my first things that get stocked in there, and they might honestly even be the first things that are stocked in there until all the way till springtime. But again, more on that later. Make sure you're subscribed, that way you won't miss any of those videos I got coming up on that native tank. That's probably going to be the focus of my channel here for a little while, but I will try to get some of this other stuff I've been talking about on video as well. Some of these water changes, filter changes, and that sort of thing. So thanks for joining me as we traveled around the world here in the fish room. I will see you real soon on the next one. Hope you enjoyed this one.